everybody. Sorry about the delay. I'm Lily Tsai. I'm a professor in the political science department and director of the MIT Governance Lab, which is a group of behavioral and social scientists who work with policymakers and practitioners to research and develop innovations bridging the gap between citizens and government, particularly in challenging environments. And by that, we mean anything ranging from Appalachia to, rural sub-Saharan Africa. So our research aims to address how people increasingly want to be able to have a say in the organizations and communities they belong to, even though they usually don't want to say something about every single issue. They just want to be able to say something when they have something. People might want to have a say in policy decisions in their communities, or what we call big D democracy, such as a town hall in Wisconsin or participatory budgeting here in Cambridge. They may also want to say in everyday decisions in their communities, such as schools, workplaces, and companies, or what we call small d democracy. Technology now makes it possible for everyone to have a say. But we know this can be very overwhelming in two ways. Number one, it can be too much information. So how can we possibly comprehend everything and summarize it and digest it? And second, people are, of course, learning to behave very badly on social media. Discourse has become really uncivil, and there's an urgent need for online platforms that are what we call more pro-democratic. We want to use technology to help understand all of this overwhelming information and to restore civility. And more civility, thankfully, is something that people across the board agree about. So we see former VP Mike Pence in a talk at Dartmouth highlighting that partisanship does not need to be vicious and that, quote, democracy depends on a heavy dose of civility. He says, I honestly think we would do well as a nation to return to that principle of freedom and mutual respect. Similarly, we see former President Biden asking Americans to cool down the rhetoric after the assassination attempt on President Trump. And ordinary Americans want more civil discourse too. Each year, the American Bar Association polls the public on civic literacy and current events, and surveys from previous years show Americans believe society has become less civil and therefore want more compromise from their politicians and blame social media and public officials for the decline in civility. So one method to use technology to increase mutual understanding and civility is through deliberation. Deliberative democracy is a form of democracy where people come together with mutual respect and as political equals to discuss political issues, listen to each other, and make decisions about matters of common interest. Deliberation is thought to have benefits for individual participants, to improve the quality of the decision, and to have system-level benefits, legitimizing the political system as a whole. Online deliberative platforms have been growing in use in both the public sector and the private sector, and there are applications in the private sector that could strengthen the small d democracy and build our skills of engaging democratically with one another in our everyday lives. These include things like employee town halls, or even just doing quick temperature checks among working groups to see what people are thinking without going through the sort of tiring rigmarole of calendaring and scheduling a meeting. It could help with coping with the move towards shareholder democracy, and it can even just improve how consumers deliberate over online reviews. Our focus, though, is on how we can build on existing technologies and improve them with rigorous interdisciplinary research, and how we can innovate by integrating generative AI to enhance the benefits of online spaces for deliberation. So first, we wanted to approach this issue by identifying a set of guiding values and principles for what we felt were socially and ethically important. So the first thing we did was to write an MIT AI impact paper laying out these principles and values from political philosophy. We wanted to preserve agency. So preserving agency ensures that participants make the choices, not the AI. Encouraging mutual respect was another important principle. And we also wanted to promote equality and inclusiveness. We want people to feel protected. So we think that the identity of participants on platforms should be anonymous but authenticated, and participants should be representative of the population as a whole. Augmenting citizenship ensures that AI helps participants understand other perspectives or the issue more fully, but doesn't substitute or take away from the actions that citizens themselves should have control over. With those principles, we developed our own AI-integrated platform for deliberative democracy, which we call deliberation.io. And we've designed this platform to be modular, so we can include or take out modules as our research uncovers what is most effective. Right now, there are 4 modules that we are working on, and each of these circles is a module we have. Under each of the circles is the goal that the module is aiming for. And for each of the modules, we have particular outcomes that we're interested in studying. Things like, are people able to justify their reasoning for a particular position? Do they have empathy for other positions? What is the area of agreement? And do they find the decision legitimate? And are they willing to cooperate with the decision voluntarily? All of these are outcomes related to what we want deliberation to do in order to support democracy. Importantly, we are testing each of these modules in what we call evaluation-guided system development. That is to say, we're using randomized controlled trials, or A/B testing, to make sure that we're not just getting user engagement or more users using the platform, but that the positive system level and decision level democratic outcomes we care about, the downstream effects, are also something that we're seeing when people use this platform. If you take nothing else from this presentation, I hope that you'll take away this, that we should all be demanding that the technologies that are being developed are tested and assessed to see if they have these positive downstream outcomes, rather than just always focusing on maximizing the number of users. So I'll give a brief overview of each of these modules and say a little bit about what we're learning in more detail. So here's an example of how a user joins a conversation on deliberation.io. The user starts by expressing, oh, let me see if this is playing? Actually, maybe this is the screenshot. Okay, so the user starts by expressing how much they agree or disagree with an issue. In this case, should the US have, for example, an automatic voter registration policy? Then the user makes a comment which will be seen by others on the platform. After the user enters their comment, they then enter what we've nicknamed our Socratic dialogue module. So this video shows a sample interaction. And let me just see, is this moving? Okay, well, statically, this is actually supposed to be run as a little bit of an interactive video, but in any case, the user here is concerned about possible biases in such a policy, and the chatbot then responds by reasonably probing this concern and asking the user, why would an automatic policy have biases? An AI chatbot asks, in other words, the user to reflect and reason through their comment, and then the user has the option to update their comment if they would like. So our results from a study of 1,500 research participants show that users who engage in reason giving with our Socratic dialogue LLM actually moderated their positions and moved to more centrist positions after the exercise. So amazingly, in other words, an AI chatbot that supports a user through a little bit of reflection just between the user and the chatbot actually helped to depolarize the discussion. Engaging in reason giving with an LLM also led users to report higher quality of conversation, higher perceptions of feeling respected, a more pleasant experience, and more willingness to engage in civic participation after the deliberation. In this case, signing up to receive a newsletter. These are all extremely encouraging results for bringing more civility back into the discussions and decisions that we have to make together. A second module that we're testing is something that we've nicknamed Face of the Crowd. And the idea behind this module is that people tend to believe that they are farther apart on a question than they actually are. So visualizations from this module quickly summarize the conversation for participants. In one of our studies, we asked research participants if they support the use of the military against civilians during peaceful protests. It turns out both Democrats and Republicans tended to oppose military use in this case, but people in both parties had misconceptions about their fellow citizens. So Democrats started off the deliberation believing that Republicans are more supportive of military use than they actually were. Interestingly, Republicans also thought that other Republicans were more supportive of military use than they actually are. We then showed visualizations of where people actually stand on the issue, and those who saw these visualizations and realized there was a large common area of agreement between Democrats and Republicans tended to increase their support for not using military force against peaceful protests. So therefore, increasing the number of people who are in the common area of overlap. Our third module is something called dynamic deliberation, which is an AI-moderated conversation on our platform. The AI generates an agreement statement based on the existing comments that have been made in the deliberation or conversation, and then poses a subsequent question to the group, in this case about how to define peaceful protest. So what we saw in the conversation about the use of military on peaceful protest was that people were like, people tended to agree, yes, or no, we don't think that the military should be used against civilians in peaceful protest. But then people started to get stuck on what the definition of peaceful protest was. And so here the chatbot says, okay, people seem to agree on this, but let's now talk about what we mean by peaceful protest. So they have a second round of discussion to try and come to an agreement on the definition of peaceful protest. This slide shows sort of the process through going through the first round of discussions, an AI statement of agreement that summarizes what we agree on, and then an AI question prompt that then leads to a second round of deliberation, and then a second round of agreement. And what we found that was really interesting was that in all cases, the AI moderated conversation led to more support for rights to peaceful protest. In other words, people, again, moved towards the area of common agreement. And we saw this change with all groups, with Democrats, with independents, and with Republicans. Other results that aren't shown here also include increased understanding of what was being discussed and increased perceptions that the platform was legitimate. Using NLP, we also saw that AI-moderated conversations encouraged a greater diversity of comments, a greater diversity of words, and a greater diversity of topics. So it does seem like AI-generated statements can be another way of summarizing a lot of information quickly for participants. And we're now doing research to understand whether participants feel that in some ways an AI moderator is seen as more impartial, and that's why they see AI-moderated deliberations as more legitimate. Although we say all of this, of course, while noting we should continue to be careful about understanding exactly how the AI works. The last module I'll discuss is a comment ordering module, and this shows comment voting on our platform, and actually it's supposed to show a series of comments. After each comment, the user selects a button, agree, disagree, or pass, and the next comment shows up. So comment routing or comment ordering are important parts of a participant's experience with online deliberation platforms. When users take part in a conversation online on online deliberative platforms, they're exposed to a set of comments, usually displayed sequentially. So computer scientists generally design the order in which these comments are displayed to help the algorithm work most efficiently, and not necessarily by these kinds of downstream social considerations, such as making the user feel more heard or making them feel like the process is legitimate. So we were interested in examining this, and we did some research where participants first indicated their position about automatic voter registration, and then they were randomized into one of three conditions. Similar comments that were similar to their own opinion, moving gradually to different. Those who started off with viewing comments that were very different from their own opinions, and then slowly moving to ones that were more similar, and then random, which is actually, I think, the default case typically in these platforms. So interestingly, we found that participants in the similar to different condition were more likely to find the process more legitimate and to feel more represented when compared to the random order condition. People find it more comfortable to first see opinions that are closer to themselves and then move to more different ones. They seem to be more likely to accept different views when they're moving from similar to different. So again, we see participants feel that they feel more respected when they're in the similar to different comment ordering. So to summarize, through our Socratic dialogue module, we're learning that AI-assisted reasoning can move opinions to more centrist positions and depolarize the discussion. Showing people the face of the crowd visualizations can help us find clear areas of agreement, correct misperceptions about polarization when it doesn't actually exist, and realize how much we actually agree with one another. AI-moderated conversations with AI-generated agreement statements and questions can lead to more nuanced discussion, more understanding, and more legitimacy of deliberation and decision. And similar to different comment routing, helps people feel more respected and more represented. All of our studies have been done in the lab so far with research participants, but we're now also working on a set of field studies. Our first one will be with the Washington, D.C. government with the Office of the Chief Technology Officer. So using deliberation.io, we'll discuss 2 policy issues with citizens in D.C. One, the use of AI in government, and 2, AI in the future of the D.C. economy. We've already run one focus group in D.C. Here are some of the photos from that. And the actual town hall discussions for the D.C. city government go live in July and October. We also have some plans to design a preference aggregation module, and we're also running full studies of our pilots where we're exploring topics with different levels of polarization to see if the results replicate and hold for these different kinds of topics. Finally, we're working with potential partners on other locations for field studies, including Michigan, Texas, and Utah. And we hope that this work will help participants and policymakers make sense of the information they receive from online town hall meetings, and most of all, restore civility to our political discourse. So a big thanks to SERC and Schwarzman for enabling this work. It's relatively rare for those of us who study political philosophy and political theory to be working together with computer scientists. So we're very grateful to SERC for making this possible. And I should also say that I'm going to flip, hopefully, to the beginning, because I failed to talk about the research team. This is co-PI'd with Sandy Pentland, my colleague in computer science, and we're joined by a very talented research team of grad students, postdocs, and research scientists, including Lula Chen, GovLab's research director, who's here with us today. So I look forward to the questions from all of you, and I'm going to ask Lula actually to join for the Q&A. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lily. Questions?
So you used the phrase like this is the AI supporting that. Can you say more about which AI? Is that your like customized AI or from any company? And would this AI be able to get the different opinions come to like more close to the central? Would that also be able to shift the central point toward this way or toward that way?
Yeah. We do see them shifting opinions and moving people more to the middle. But if I'm not mistaken, this is based on GPT 4.0, right, Minnie? Yeah. Do you want to say anything more about how it was the prompt engineering that we used?
Sure.
Actually, you might have to just raise.
I'll just speak loudly. So maybe I can address the shifting opinions part. So in the design of this, we really want people to think through their opinions, but we don't necessarily try to shift opinions. So for example, with Socratic dialogue, the way that the AI prompt works and what we're asking people to do is to reason through why they think what it is that they think, but we don't necessarily say, well, then you should, the AI then says you should think X, Y, Z, something like that. So we're not trying to shift opinions in that way. And then for the system prompting, we've been doing, it's mainly just prompt engineering that we're working on here. In terms of some of the specific cases, like with DC, we are thinking there are some values and rules that DC wants to have for making sure that that interaction with the AI goes well for citizens. So we do have some training that will happen with that. But in these iterations, we're just doing system prompting, prompt engineering that way.
Thank you for your talk. That felt actually very uplifting. We've talked a little bit about introducing bias when we use an LM. How do you make sure your moderator moderated chatbot doesn't introduce bias, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, I think this goes back to what Lula was saying, that the chatbot is supporting reflection. So it's actually taking what the person themselves says and just asking, what's your reason for that? Or what do you mean by X? So the chatbot is not engineered to nudge them in any particular direction, which is why it's so amazing that once you support a little bit of reflection, like, what are my reasons for that? Or why do I think that you actually do see people moving towards the middle. Is that fair to say? Yeah.
Hi, Lily. This is Catherine from Urban Planning. Thank you so much for a great presentation. I wanted to ask you all about the Overton window, like this idea that there's like a kind of sphere of reasonable discourse under which we can debate, and then certain things fall outside of that. And I think one of the things that's so maybe challenging and polarizing about the current moment is that both like the statements and the actions of both the current administration and others as well are shifting the Overton window. And so it makes me think about like the questions that you're posing here, and like who would be engineering the questions that would be the subject of deliberation and debate, because it seems like what's really happening, at least in this current administration, is really pushing on that Overton window such that now we're going to be debating, you know, should we be kidnapping students off the street for writing op-eds? You know what I mean? Which feels like an entirely unreasonable thing to be debating about. And like, I don't want to like sort of move my position on that in any way whatsoever. But I guess, can you comment on that and sort of like, how do we think about what is even a reasonable question to come together around when we are living this moment of kind of like extreme actions and complete norm busting that is going on right now?
Yeah. I mean, I'll turn to you, Lula, because I'd be interested to know what your answer is too. But Catherine, I think, you know, if I had a good answer to that question, you know, we'd be all set, I think, in a way. But I think what I would say is that my hope would be technologies like this that are designed to uphold pro-democratic values and principles, make it easy for anybody to ask a question. That's number one. And number two, because they're designed and tested to be pro-democratic and pro-social, that norms that promote respect and inclusiveness and open-ended curiosity and open-ended consideration are easier to uphold in this kind of online environment. Part of the problem, of course, is that the social norms that exist in, quote, social media, which is really antisocial, actually don't enable that. And so therefore, perhaps overly narrow the Overton window beyond what it can be. But I don't know if, Lula, you want to add to that?
I agree with Lily there. I guess the other, I hope it's not a cheap answer, but at least when we're testing this in the field, we are really working with governments, and we're trying to find questions that are very practical, that people actually care about. You know, where should we put bike lanes? Those types of things. So we're trying to keep that topic narrow, at least in these field tests that we're doing. So that's where we're constraining it. But once it's open, I agree with Lily. You know, we'll hope to see more of these good norms coming about.
Okay, let's thank Lily and Lula again.